Good afternoon, everybody. We're back with another episode of the Pressing Forward podcast. And today I've got Brent. Brent, what is your last name? I'm sorry.
Brabant. It's French Canadian, so everyone just ended up calling me BB in the army.
All right, BB Brent Brayball, right? Bayball?
Brabant.
Brayball. All right. Brent, you were an army soldier. You served in Iraq and Afghanistan. You run your own business right now. Is it 11 Bravo, right? That's the
Yep,
name of your
11
business.
Bravo LLC. As you know, that's our MOS for infantry, and we were really shocked when I submitted that wasn't already taken as like a company.
Yeah, that's and it's straightforward to the point, if anybody has any questions, you just tell them to check out the job description of an 11 Bravo and that should give you a little insight on the kind of things we're going to cover. But I'm glad, you and I I've been following you for a long time, and you and I have, bullshitted back and forth. I like the fact that you engage with the people in some form or fashion. You're out there running and gunning. You put some funny ass content, some good content up there, and when people comment or message you, at least for me, I was fortunate enough to have you reach back out. So it's cool to see that the people that you follow along with are actually pretty solid individuals, and that's what led me to want to. And your age, just so everybody knows, Brent is our officially the first Army soldier
Oh
interviewed
yeah,
on the Pressing Forward podcast. So there,
yeah.
that's
Thank you. I
yeah.
mean, I've seen all the ones you've done with all the Marines, and like, it's cool to listen to and get a different perspective of someone else's service, right? Like, especially different branches. Yeah, same job, but different branches. It's actually really cool to see somebody else's path through the service as well.
Yeah, and what even cooler is we're gonna get you to divulge your journey to us today. We're just gonna talk about, some of that same stuff because I think there's a lot of Marines out there, and vice versa, and in all branches, you kind of see a glimpse into what the lifestyle is like and some of the differences, and people automatically make an assumption on like just because that 10th mountain, remember back it was like a year or two ago, they did that shoot house and they looked like absolute
Oh
ass.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then everybody's just like, man, the army sucks. And it's like, you know what? In every unit out there, there's there's guys and
Oh yeah,
gals
they're
that
shit
suck
bags.
ass at their jobs, and then there's guys and gals that are like rock stars at their jobs. So,
Yeah,
um, you
yeah.
know,
You've seen the one where the Marine, he just lowers his rifle and
oh,
NDs it and
ND's
goes
right into
around.
the yeah, right into the
Yeah, and
range,
you just see that staff sergeant just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
Yep, ready to light you up.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I mean that it is what it is, right? It always creates this perspective of when you see a unit or you group them into this big persona, and obviously we know like with the 10th Mountain thing, it was just that one unit, and range instructor that day was just it was a piece of shit, right? Like, but the video got out, which is good because then it was addressed all the way up by their
yeah. I believe the command
their
sergeant
major.
major of the army came out, or maybe it was the sergeant major of that unit had
Yeah,
gone out there and was like in the trenches with the dudes doing it. And I think that's an important thing in leadership, getting out
but it
there
was
and
cool that it got addressed. Like,
yes,
hey, this is not the standard, and we're gonna fix it. Do I think everything should be blasted on social media for that? Absolutely not. But if that's all you got at your disposal to try to change what's going on, right? If you're a lower enlisted and you know something's wrong, maybe that's what you got.
right. Well, and that shows to be true with a lot of the stuff that's going on currently in the military. Not that I really want to focus on this, but just how social media um kind of one allows us to be able to connect with each other and like check on everyone and see what they're up to and whatever. But it also you got the ability to be able to like this shit that goes on in the barracks and like the living quarters that these guys have, like the base housing. There's like black mold and the freaking sinks. You can't drink the water at like basically any military establishment. And it's just kind of
It,
like
it it is cool that it's being changed for the next generation. Um, and I do hope that they continue that. Like, me as a private, I grew up in the Vietnam style barracks is what they called them, where it's like two dudes to a room. There's no bathroom. There's no kitchen stuff. The bathroom was like a shared common area on the full floor, which was normal for my time. But then as I left as a platoon sergeant, two dudes were in a room that had a bathroom that had a stove that had all this, and I was like, oh my God,
Right.
if I had this, I would have never got married to get out of the barracks. Like,
Yeah, well, that's the funny. The Marines like to fuck everything up. They find a way to destroy everything. It's like this is why we can't have nice things. Like we
yeah,
definitely did not have stoves in our rooms. They wouldn't even allow us to have. We had a microwave and we had a sink and a toilet and a
yeah, you
shower.
couldn't have a hot
But
plate or nothing.
no, no,
Yeah,
not at all. I mean, it's funny you do like a health and comfort and you see dudes pulling like pistols and shotguns out of their fucking wall lockers and bottles of liquor, but it's like, dude, you don't even, where's
you
your
guys call
toaster
it
at,
a
man?
health and comfort.
Yeah, when they
Yeah,
come through and
yeah, we
just
call it a health and welfare, so same thing.
yeah. So it's funny to see some, but we'll I'm sure we'll touch on a few of those things. But basically, man, I want to get to know you a little bit and be able to show who you are and the cool shit that you're doing out there. And maybe we can motivate some fuckers to like get themselves off the couch or
Yeah,
whatever it may be. So
I
where'd
guess
you
we'll start from the beginning.
yeah.
I joined the service in 2008. Graduated high school and already knew I was going into the service. So literally graduated early just to get in. Joined,
No,
wanted infantry.
you say
Go
that,
ahead.
sorry, I don't mean to cut. You say that you wanted, like, you already knew that you wanted to join. Did September 11th have anything to do with that decision?
Yeah, so that's something I like to cover is like I still remember watching the towers fall in eighth grade. You know, I still remember growing up in Florida, them showing the death toll of Iraq and Afghanistan on the news. So when you're in school and type A personality, play sports, that kind of jazz, you're like, okay, well, this is my time to go do what I can do. Like I always looked at it as, what am I doing to help my country? So I already, growing up, I was that kid in, 10th and 11th grade, reading Vietnam books, all that. I already knew I wanted to be an infantryman. Like that's all I ever wanted to do. I knew that was going to be something that's how I started my life was, hey, I'm going to go be an infantryman and, didn't really think too much beyond that at the time, which I don't think any of us do when we join.
I don't think so. If they would have had a piece of paper that had like I signed a 5-year contract, if that 5 years said 20 years at 17 years old, I probably would have signed a
Yeah,
20-year
I think most
contract,
of us would. And the Army is a little different. My first contract was 3 years, plus whatever basic was. And then, like, we knew as soon as we joined, upon completing basic training, like within 90 days, most of us would be in Iraq or Afghanistan. And I got lucky to be one of those. Like, I say lucky now because, when we get into it later on, like, people missed out on deployments later in the years. And, like you had brought up earlier when we were chit chatting offline, um, dudes start to validate that in their life of like, hey, I joined. This is what I wanted to do, and they didn't get to do that. They feel like their service didn't mean much. And I want everyone to know, like, I don't care what you joined to do. The fact that you raised your hand and you basically wrote a check that included up into your ass for the government, that's a big deal. That's an extremely these
yeah.
people, we now have guys living at home till they're 26, 27, like they don't do anything with their lives. Like the fact that most of these people between the ages of 17 and 22, my generation, like raised their hand to go fight a war that, you know, we don't know what it was for, right? Like politics aside, the government asked us to go do this and they're like, hey, send me. Like that's a
Right.
big deal.
Right, regardless of what they, and that's another thing too that I have to take into account nowadays, being a little bit older and realizing I don't want to say severity of the situation, but the reality of the situation in the sense that when you go into the recruiting station and, some people aren't enlightened to the way that the recruiters will attempt to swindle you into something. So like obviously filling the billets for whatever big army or Marine Corps or Navy needs. So they try to like sell you on a job where they might
Yeah.
teeter-totter on the fence of lying and telling the truth. And, they don't,
Yeah.
there's people that get put in that situation and they realize that this is not what they intended it to be or what they thought it was going to be. So, luckily you got, to go do what you had envisioned on doing basically since
Yeah,
you were a
I
kid.
was super lucky. I went to a school that had like a JROTC. And my last year I did that. So like I had already known I was already in the DEP program, the delayed entry program. So like, and I was the only dude that signed up for infantry. Like out of everyone in the DEP program, there's like 30, 40 of us. I was the only idiot who's like, I want to be an infantryman. Like
Yeah.
everybody else is like trying to do like techno geek stuff or like I had one dude that was like a crypto linguist, like he got qualified for that, and I was like, that sounds dumb, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
he's making tons of money
I was
now,
gonna
but
say, yes. At the time, you're like, man, you don't want to go fucking kick doors in and shoot belt-fed machine
yeah,
guns, and
right.
yeah,
I'm the very beginning of unfortunately that Call of Duty generation, right? Like literally, Modern Warfare came out as I was joining.
yep.
Like,
I remember that,
so
dude.
it's like
That was my senior year of high school. I remember I got Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and it was like because it was like obviously there's the Army and the Marines, or was it just the Marines that was in
it was just the Marines.
just
Yeah,
the
you
Marines and
there's
yeah Modern Warfare? But I was like,
yeah,
oh my, this is what it's gonna fucking be like, dude.
yeah,
Fucking
and I think I was a big reader, so like I was a big I read Starship Troopers and like the Red Badge of Courage, and like I had no delusions of grandeur of like this isn't going to be a super fun ride, but this is going to show me more about myself than anything I will ever be able to do in my life. This will set the pace of like I can either do it or I can't. And you never know, right? Like when push comes to shove, some people can rise to the occasion, some people can't, and you never know unless you put yourself in that scenario.
yes.
That whole Teddy Roosevelt like man in the arena thing. Like I believe you should put yourself into these positions to, see to weigh yourself,
Oh,
see how much you measure up.
definitely. And I was talking with I guess a friend of mine, another guy that I interviewed on the podcast, and he had said that in our society today, we lack this rite of passage as a man, like that as where when we go join the military, what is it really, like whether you get your driver's license or you're able to buy alcohol or what sets you apart from the rest of society as that rite of passage to becoming a man. And, obviously, I think that joining the military and serving your country, for us, we got to get that fulfillment in the sense of when you graduated through basic or when you went through AIT, that whole pipeline that you guys go through. Um, I'm not trying to jump too far ahead, but did you feel like that was something that you accomplished and you were a part of something larger than yourself and you've like tested your might and passed that
Yeah.
test?
So especially in the infantry, we'll go through Fort Benning, Georgia, and we all go through Sand Hill and the turning blue ceremony, or when you get your cross rifles, it's at the end of this long ruck march where they have this stupid hill, and when you get to the hill, it's right as like you've marched through the night, and as the sun's coming out, the way that the hill is perceived is just it's in front of you, like you can't see over it, and it's just steep, and it looks like it goes forever. And it's like climbing the stairway or whatever, and you're just like, this is dumb. But when you get up to it and then you come in and you go through the little gates and like, they do the pinning ceremony for your cross rifles, technically at that point, you're now an infantryman. You're no longer a recruit. And you're like, you're excited, right? Like you don't know that you don't know shit yet, but
Right.
you know now that you are at least, a step above, like, all right, hey, we're graduating in the next 2 days. This is done. We're going to go to a unit and then we're going to be taught and then we're going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. Like it's one of those like, okay, here we go, right? Like you're going to airborne school, you go to airborne school after that, and you're an infantryman from
Right.
now to the rest of your life. You were an infantryman.
And I like how the Army has a designator or a signifier that you're a grunt, that you're an infantryman, like the crossed rifles thing. Obviously every rank, other than PFC in the Marine Corps, and the enlisted side has the crossed rifles underneath the chevron. And not that I would want it any other way, but it's you wish that there was a like if you're a MRB dude, if you're in a Raider battalion, you get to wear the pin. If you're an EOD dude, you have the pin. If you've got your
Well,
jump
I guess
wings and
that's something I would like to ask you guys is because we see it as like in the army, it becomes this thing where people just become badge collectors. They might not be really good at their job, but they got a ton of badges.
yeah,
So it's like they're like, oh, look at me. And we thought that you guys were cooler because if you saw a Marine, Lance Corporal, Corporal, Sergeant, Staff Sergeant, you never really knew what he was.
Yeah.
So you went off of his demeanor and how he carried himself. And
That's not,
that spoke a lot
I never
because
thought of that.
exactly this is where I like the difference between the Army and the Marine Corps is like, right, we wear unit patches. You can immediately, if I'm wearing a big old second ID patch, I'm in second infantry division, but I could still be a pogue, right? I could still be a fueler attached to second ID, right? But you guys, wherever we saw Marines, we never knew what they were until we saw their weapons. Weapons were what gave them away of if they were infantry or machine gunners or raiders or whatever. But when they were just in their uniforms, it was hard to tell what they did because the majority of them, like by and large, I'd say 80%, carried themselves so well. Obviously, there's shit bags everywhere, but that's
Yeah.
the one thing I really did like about the Marine Corps. You know, when you guys wore a uniform, y'all blended in, and nobody really knew what anyone did on the Army side because you don't wear
Gotcha.
any insignias.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way of thinking because in the Marine Corps definitely is they have the term and the phrase every Marine's a rifleman. There's a lot of guys and girls out there that would disagree with that statement, but uh, for the most part, how we're able to all look in unison. There's not a huge differentiate. Obviously, with your awards and your ribbons that you obtain, and like maybe your shooting badge there's not really many other things that you add onto the uniform. So everybody, is you're either light green or you're dark green, you're one of the two. In the
Dude,
Marine
the
Corps.
Army, oh my God, we have everything. They're like, like every unit, everything like has their own fucking like thing. You get to the unit, you get your patch on your dress uniform. Your blue cord and your discs identify that you're infantry. The cross rifles identify your infantry, but like every branch has their own cord or color, and then there's like other stuff you can wear, like the little Flavor Flav medal once you've like, you're cool enough. Like
Yeah.
we just keep adding shit to our uniform.
Well,
That's why
okay. Speaking of adding, well, not adding shit to the uniforms. You know how the Army. I think it was in like the last year they brought back the like the World War II era
pinks
style.
and greens,
Yeah.
pinks and greens.
What do you think of that adaptation or bringing that back?
Jesus, I almost joined the guard just to get a set. Like,
They
so
do.
I grew up with the greens, right? So I made, private through sergeant. I was still in greens. I didn't have to wear blues yet until I became a staff sergeant because the greens were getting phased out. And then um, I always got stuck doing like guidon and stuff like that. Um, so when we did like ceremonies or balls, I went and got the little half cut jackets that are held together with chain that you normally only see like sergeant majors and colonels wearing. But since I always had to like stand there and like talk on a mic or something like that, I was like, well, I might as well be fancy. Like it
Yeah.
comes with like a cape, like it comes with like weird trousers, like a little belly band. Like you feel like some aristocrat in the 1912s. Like
Yeah,
it
there
was
you
crazy.
go. Like you just got back from World War I and you're like smoking a stogie and drinking a glass of whiskey neat, you're like, yes, I'm
Yeah, and
fancy.
like we have a sword, and you're just like, why are we letting a bunch of drunk people walking around with this shit? Like,
Yeah, that's I've seen some plenty of shenanigans when I was at well, whatever. It's not um so basic. It seems like you obviously you're passionate about your time in service.
yeah, I think
Throughout that,
everyone
well,
should be.
yeah, but I was just gonna say like throughout that initial experience, right? So like basic and then your infantry schooling, were
So
you
with us, it's all one thing, right? So when you sign for infantry in the army, it's all one stop.
okay, right,
So
right.
it's not like basic is 9 weeks and then AIT is whatever. It's called OSA. It's just one stop unit training. So you're basically show up, and then by the time you graduate, you're an infantryman. There's no
Got it.
pauses, no
Okay, okay.
breaks.
So when you're done being a recruit, like it's like you or whatever a green dude, fresh to the unit or not to the unit, but to basic. Once you're done with the pipeline, it's not like you're a soldier. You're an infantryman. Like you claim the
Yep,
title of an infantry soldier, like
yep. You're just a
at the
11
Commonwealth.
Bravo.
Got it.
Yep, you're an 11 Bravo 1 is what you're called.
So with that, you get completed with this. Do you guys get like a little bit of leave time in between going to your unit, or you just go straight
No.
to Big Army?
You go straight to your unit, especially when I joined because they didn't know what unit you guys were going to. And like the unit I went to was slated to go to JROTC and then deploy immediately. So they're like, hey, we need to get you to, JBLM because you're going to show up in process, go to your unit, go to the field, then go to JRTC, and then go to Iraq. So
Damn,
within
so
6 months of me graduating, I was in Iraq.
you got thrown right to the fucking meat grinder, dude.
Well, yes, you always think like you look back and like, as an adult now, I'm like, man, I really didn't know shit. And they were just like, hey, like, we're gonna do a patrol. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking for. Like,
Yeah. That's
luckily, like, and this might be a pro or a con. I was really into, paintball and airsoft and all that dumb shit before the army. So you get to learn to look for signs or like disturbed things or like just look for stuff that's out of place. But the problem is you're in a country where you don't know what normal is supposed to look like.
yeah, definitely.
So it takes you 2 to 3 months to figure out what normal is, and then you can start spotting stuff that's out of place. And only because I had a high PT score right before the deployment. So I literally trained in Alpha Company as a rifleman and then a saw gunner. And then literally 2 months before the deployment, I got transferred over to the scout team, sniper section team, to be a scout because I had a high PT score and they needed people. So they just pulled people that had high PT scores.
Yeah, that's
So I show up to another platoon of all these, supposed to be like the studs, but I've never trained with them. And all the equipment is already packed up to be overseas. So I'm just sitting there like, hey, man,
what do I do
like,
with
what do
my
you,
hands? Yeah.
yeah, like what? So, so literally the first 2 weeks cross training is just like notional stuff. They're like, all right, doing reconnaissance stuff and all that. And I was just like, it would have been cool to have been, in JRTC with you guys and learned like on the job.
Yeah.
So I had to learn it while we were in Iraq.
So what's going through your head then, like as you make this transition from obviously the platoon or the squad that you've done this work up with, like after you got done with AIT, you go through the different training evolutions that you guys have, and then 2 weeks before the deployment, or they just toss you to the wind and throw you in the scout platoon. How was that? How'd you take that transition? How'd you roll with those punches?
Well, again, I didn't know what I didn't know. So, I got lucky. I had a pretty good squad leader and platoon sergeant, and they're like, "Hey, this is what like we are going to do during the deployment, right? We're going to set up SKTs on certain areas. We're going to overwatch main MSRs, create patterns of life, and we'll cross train you on everything because we're only a 5, 6 man team that's going to go out. Everybody needs to learn how to do everything. We didn't have a machine gun with us. So like biggest gun we had is if we took the Barrett with us or a 40 Mike on the M4. Like we knew like, hey, like if anything happens, like we're kind of fucked. Like we're gonna dump all our ammunition in that general direction and just call evac. Because we're only supposed to be there to observe and build, patterns on these people. And, if we know somebody's coming through our area to keep tabs on them the whole way, like that's basically what we thought we were going to do the whole time.
Okay, so in this team, was there like a schoolhouse trained sniper or like a unit? Like, so
Yeah.
you guys had a
So
sniper?
So the scouts were broken down into 3 scout teams and the sniper section. The sniper section was 2 teams of 3 people, but each scout team would get one sniper rifle as well. So we were just cross trained on it, like we were not good at it at all. And then we had to all know how to use our different radios, um, like higher radios to like bounce
Yeah.
off the ionosphere with like all that crazy jazz. And uh and then we would rotate who would carry an M4 with a grenade launcher as well, just so we have indirect capabilities. But the majority of it is just building a hide site or establishing somebody's house as an urban hide site that can fit 6 motherfuckers in for a couple days. Like
Okay.
that's where the problem was.
So you guys get to Iraq, and now you've got this mission where you guys are, I don't not you're forward of friendly lines, and you're observing, I guess, like whether it be census doing like census observation or seeing what kind of
Yeah.
enemy activity. There's people planting IEDs, so you can either assess the threat there or call it up to higher.
Yep.
How
And
it
and that's what we were told we were going to do when we got there.
and did that change once you got there?
Yeah, it changed the moment we got on the ground.
Okay, so another wrench in the fucking wheel. What happens when you guys get to Iraq?
So we partner with the our partner force, right? So we're put in this basic like compound, but it's bigger than a compound, where the 24th Iraqi Army is overwatching the city, and within their compound, that's where we are. But we are pulling guard on them while they're pulling guard on the city, right? Because green on blue, shit like that. And this is when the elections are going to happen. So that took over main precedence. We were there for the free elections of Iraq. So literally everything we thought we were going to do gets scrapped. And the biggest push is for us to train the partner force, to secure areas, and to set up polling sites and make sure we do presence patrols. Like everyone's doing presence patrol. Doesn't matter who you are. Like we would literally grab cooks when we were short dudes and go do a patrol through the city just to try to make the area we were in feel like it's watched constantly, get ready for the elections. Because everyone thinks like the elections is going to be like, the end all be all. Like,
Right.
they're going to vote somebody in to be the president and all these mayors, and then America's going to be able to pull out finally.
Yeah.
Obviously, that turned into a failure, but that was the precedence going into that.
Now, when you guys get this like change of mission, I mean, is there some obvious disappointment in the sense of everybody's prepping for a different mission set, and now you guys are going there essentially being like what the Iraqi police should be doing, right? Like you're
Yeah.
taking over and
So
doing their jobs.
So for me, being a 19-year-old kid at the time, like, I don't really know this much, right? I'm not really paying attention to the political infrastructure of the, country I'm in, right? I'm 19. I'm like, signed up to be an infantryman. I thought we were gonna like clear buildings all day and do all this shit. So I'm kind of like, all right, maybe our job's to patrol, right? Like the books I read on Vietnam, like dudes are patrolling all the time through villages. I'm like, all right, that's gonna be our missions, right? Like I'm going to patrol through these cities. I'm going to be as friendly as possible. And then if somebody wants to fight, we'll give them a fight. And I think I cared a lot the first deployment. Like I actually cared about interacting with people and trying to put off this persona of like an American that cares about this country and these people. And then by the second deployment, like you don't give a shit about these people. You
Yeah.
realize that their culture and way of life is very different from us. I don't want to say wrong because that's not me to judge, but they don't care about a lot of things. And that country would have, both countries are not sustainable for the type of government we were trying to put in. Like,
Oh
not to
yeah.
get political,
Well, it's
but
not that. These people have a lineage and a legacy of the way that they live their like, the way that they live their lives. And it's you're expecting to come in and take thousands of years of the way that these people have, I don't know, been I don't want to say indoctrinated, but the way that
yeah, I mean,
they
that's a
carried
good,
on in
no, that's a good
tradition,
word.
it's a tradition for them, the way that they live, they don't want us coming in there and establishing pop music and McDonald's on the corners and shit. That's not what they want.
No, and it turned into a shit show. I ended up doing 12 months in Iraq. Um, we were the last combat brigade, supposedly. That's what it was supposed to be. So we drove the invasion route backwards at the end of our deployment to signify handing everything off to our partner forces. And then, as you know, that lasted a
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, seriously. Before I
So,
know that there was actually, I was just talking with Blake Flannery last night about that's funny that you say that you're taking the egress back the same way that they essentially went in because with it being a 20-year, essentially it's April right now, but um March 20th wasn't too long ago, and that's a pretty historic thing that happens. I mean, did it have any thought in your head at the time that you guys are coming back about any of the historicness to it? And that
yeah,
like
so we had two soldiers. Sergeant Foster, and I forgot the other guy who invaded Iraq. So like they were there during the invasion,
Right.
driving this route, and like they brought news cameras in to interview these sergeants, and like they did their interview very well, and then they told us what they really thought. And we had one Desert Storm guy, Sergeant Calkins, like in his ongoing joke was he's like, I'm gonna come to this country a third time. And it didn't dawn on me till later on what he meant by that, meaning we're gonna invade this country again at some point. Like he had already did it in Desert Storm, and then he did it again in Iraq. And he was like, we're gonna come back here again. He's like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And it was funny that they both said the same thing. They're like, yeah, cool. We invaded. We're retrograding, like to signify this. He's like, we'll be back.
It's crazy.
And it's
Yeah.
just it's
That's
crazy
great. It
to
is.
think that they called it. They called it that day, and they didn't. There was no thought in their mind that they'd be good about it. They're like, yeah, we'll come back again. It, it'll
So
happen.
with that being your initial experience, and I'm gonna go ahead and assume that it was a semi-successful deployment. Nothing
Yeah,
really
I
crazy
I learned a
happened.
lot. You get promoted. You start to look at more moving pieces and figure out what you want to do. You're like, okay, this is what I think I want to do. This is what I think I can do. And
Like you mean in
I
terms of
knew
schools, right? Like going to the follow-on, like what you're gonna do when you get back in the army or what?
no more of like in the infantry, like so I know in the Marine Corps, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have MOSs for like every fucking thing, right? Like your machine gunners are technically an MOS. In the army, like that's just a job. Like you could show up and they're like, hey, you're gonna be the saw gunner or you're gonna be the 240 gunner. And then maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, they're like, all right, cool, you're going to do this now, and a new private just they
Got
put
it.
him in.
Got it.
So being in the scout section, and then the last few months, I got moved back to the line to get prepped to take a team. Was like, okay, cool. Like now I'm going to be a team leader. Like now I'm going to be in charge of dudes. Is this what I want to do, or do I want to move back to the scout section, the long guns, and be a sniper? And like you always want to weigh those options because you're like, all right, this will get me promoted faster, but this is way cooler and fun. What do I really want to do?
Well, at that point in time, did you think like you were gonna make or attempt to make a career of service in the military? Like you're
Oh yeah, yeah. I knew I was going to do some time. I didn't think I was going to do 10 years, but I knew I was going to do another term
okay,
because there was already rumors of when we got back that we would get to go to Afghanistan.
okay.
And my big thing was I wanted to see Iraq and I wanted to see Afghanistan. I didn't want to like not see both countries, right? Like, you join the
Yeah,
army to
who?
at least deploy
Yeah,
and do and see stuff. So I really wanted to see Afghanistan, and I got lucky when we got back. They said that our unit had like got on a chart to go,
okay.
so I immediately reenlisted.
So you do, I mean, the fact that you guys do 12-month deployments is just asinine. I know they changed that up, right? They don't do
Yeah, so my
12-month deployments anymore.
Afghanistan deployment we only did 6 months.
Okay, that's because I mean, dude, that would be so shitty. I got some friends that are in the army, but they like some guys will get their R&R time at the beginning of that 12-month deployment, and
Yeah, I got so lucky. Oh my God. So I guess I was on like patrol or something when it came down, and they needed a guy that day. So that's what saved me because I was the youngest guy. I was the only PFC. The unit I went to, only a handful of us went to from basic. So we're all PFCs. Everybody that was there was like a specialist or above, which would be like your corporals, but not NCO yet. And they had already had a deployment. So like I'm a PFC with no deployment, and I'm like, 60 days in country, and they're like, hey, we need a guy coming up at the 90-day mark to go do his mid-tour leave. And luckily, I guess I was out on patrol or something, so it got bumped. So I didn't have to do it, and I didn't take mine until 8 months in. So then when I got back, I was like, I got 90 days. Like
yeah. It's just crazy to me how that works, It's like I know that you got to give guys a little bit of time, but fly them there, fly them back, it's crazy.
I feel
Uh,
bad. the same unit I was in, their first deployment was 15 months.
Yeah.
They got extended, and I like, you know, 12 months is a long time. It went by fast, right? I was still excited of learning everything and doing patrols. So like it didn't, and I didn't have to worry about like family or anything back home. So it went by pretty fast. But for dudes with kids and like
Oh yeah.
families, I feel really bad for them. I really do.
Yeah, we had a few guys on our platoon that were married, like on the first deployment that were married and had kids, and like I'm just like worried about like, hey, let me get a cheap pack of cigarettes and some dip, and Playboy mag or some get the Brits to give you a Nuts magazine. But that's unfortunate. It sucks, dude, being on a deployment with kids, like being a dad now. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. That's shitty. But anyways, you get
Yeah, but
back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
no, yeah, like I don't get how people do it. I really don't. Like, we had a platoon sergeant that had like three kids, and it was like his third tour, and I was just like, bro, you've missed so much of their lives.
Yeah.
That shit's wild.
But that's hey, if they're dedicated to the job, and the important thing is having that partner, your spouse or wife or a husband, whatever situation you're in, to be supportive of you, because there's a lot of guys that also get screwed over while they're on deployment with
Yeah, I mean we've all seen
we all
that.
know that story. It's the tale as
Yeah.
old as time. But so you get back from Iraq after 12 months. You guys know that you've been slated to go to Afghanistan. What's that shift in, I guess, like your training? Like, obviously the environments are different. The terrain, the enemy,
So the big
TTPs.
thing is when the unit gets back, it's all the people that are getting out. Because my first deployment, we still had dudes that were stop lost.
Like they
Like,
they had they got like stopped from EAS or
yeah,
ETS to continue service.
yep.
Yeah.
Like there is sergeants, specialists, privates that should have been out of the army, but were told by the army, no, you're deploying. When you get back, you can get out. And like, I thought that shit was wild.
Yeah, dude.
Like there was a couple dudes that were smart though. They played the system. They knew they'd get stop lost, and they got $500 extra a month. So they literally did the whole deployment stop lost. And then as soon as they got back, re-signed. So like there was
Solid.
people who played the system a little bit. And I mean, dude, $500 extra a month, and you're already gonna be there anyway. Like, why not make some money?
Yeah, definitely. And then you get hit with a sweet reenlistment bonus or something at the end of that too.
Exactly.
Um,
So we got back. The biggest thing was just reorganizing. I was in Bravo Company at that point, reorganizing all the platoons and specialty sections because tons of people are getting out, right? Like people are retiring, people are coming from different units. Like we damn near got an entire basic training company that showed up. Like we had like 40 some odd new privates, and it was like, oh my God.
Now, do you think that happened like in lieu of the command or the army thinking that you guys were gonna like have a fight on your hands going to Afghanistan with the tempo that Afghanistan was at in that time
I
period?
think it was they had to plus up our numbers, right?
Yeah,
So we were at I think like 80% strength, like that means filled out positions. And at the time before we knew it, that this will come into play later. I know they wanted us close to 100% for Afghanistan because the unit we were replacing had took some casualties, like a lot, like mostly landmines and stuff. But here's the kicker: that we deployed to Afghanistan in 2012, right when Karzai 12 went into effect. President Karzai had all these rules, and one of the rules was X amount of troops in country. So that's when like contractors like went up. So right as we get ready to deploy, maybe a month and a half out, they tell us that we can only take 60% of our force. So now we have to go through platoons and ask who doesn't want to go on deployment.
that's crazy. You would think that you just had all this time spent working up at these numbers, and that's like a mind game that really can take a toll on some dudes, like in,
Well, and
in,
it
in
was
a good way and a bad way, it can go either way.
I learned a lot about that because the dudes who were the first people to talk about how cool they were on their deployment, all the stuff they did were the first persons to raise their hand to get out of this one. And I lost it, dude. I got so upset, like, like definitely undisciplined at this point, like because they bring all the NCOs in. At this time, I'm a sergeant, right? I'm in charge of Bravo Company sniper section, and they bring in all E5s and up, and they say they can only take 60% of us. Who doesn't want to go? And of course, like the super loudmouth fucking dudes who talk all about like their deployments in the 82nd or the 101st were the first people to be like, hey, I don't want to go on this deployment. And we were just like, you're a giant piece of shit. Like, those are the dudes that like just ride their privates all fucking day and night. Like, you know, and they were the first people to opt out of this deployment because the unit we were replacing had a lot of casualties. Like a
Right.
lot of dudes coming back with one leg, no legs in a hand. Like, not a lot of deaths, just a lot of fucking
Yeah, a lot of
wounded.
maiming. Yeah, losing limbs.
So
Um,
dudes were just like, no, I don't want to deploy. And I was shocked. I really was. And the only thing that did make me proud though was all my privates and then all the platoon I was in before I went to sniper section, all those privates. When they got brought in, all the NCOs were still in the room. And like, who doesn't want to deploy? None of them raised their hands.
nice.
They're like, we all want to go. They're like, that's what we signed up for. And I was like, oh my God, they're growing up.
Well, I was gonna say, do you think that you had a role to play in it? Maybe you as a mentor and a leader, and you know, being effective in training, so like they knew that they could trust you, or they got to a proficiency level that they weren't, they were ready to go.
So this comes into play of something we used to talk about a lot. When I was a private and we go on leave and come back, there'd be 4 to 5 guys that just don't come back, right? The AWOL. How many people went AWOL when you were in?
One for sure that I know, but not many.
Think about that. We'd have 4 or 5 every time we went to leave, like on leave. That's like the difference in time frames of like people wanting to be in the army and not wanting to be.
Yeah.
So I think that like everybody that like if when I was a team leader and you came into my section, I was always honest with you. I was like, look, if you don't want to be in the army, you let me know. I will go buy you fucking drugs right now and let you smoke them so I can put you on a piss test and get you the fuck out. Like, if you absolutely don't want to be here, I will do everything within my power to get you out of the army. If you want to be here, okay, show up, do the right thing. But if you don't want to be here, I promise you I will help you get out.
Did you see? I mean, was that a common thing to see? Like the guys didn't want to be there.
Unfortunately, not to make it about like race, religion, or creed, we were still kicking out people for being gay when I was in the beginning. Like we kicked out a couple dudes who were gay. Like I don't give a shit. But also we got an influx of people of ethnicity that I think they joined just to get away from where they were. And I don't think they really thought about it much when they picked infantry because infantry and cook used to be the easiest way to join the army because it like requires the lowest GT score. It's the fastest basic training and then OSIT and then you're at your unit. So I think there was a huge group of people that had joined that didn't really think that far ahead. Now they're in the infantry,
Right.
and now it's dawning on them that this is their life, and they're
Yeah,
like,
they're
I
out in the field sleeping in a fucking fighting position or something, like getting rained on and it's cold and
yeah.
you're eating a cold MRE and it's like, I did not want to do this.
I try to tell people, can anyone be an infantryman? Absolutely, but for somebody to choose it and continue to do it, that's different.
Yeah.
It's not that it's it sucks. Anyone can suck, but it's the willingness to suck and volunteering to do it that sets you apart.
Yeah. I agree. That's when when you see guys step up in adverse situations where, there's obstacles in front of them that look like they can be pretty difficult when you got guys that are willing to take on like a task like that of either breaching the wall or climbing over it or getting around it or whatever way you want to talk about, getting through an obstacle. The guys that are willing to take on that battle, that shows their testament to what it is that they're actually about. Like if you're going to
Yeah,
talk the
that's
talk,
we
walk
we
the
did
walk.
we'd literally have privates fight each other over who gets to breach the mind wire obstacle, right? So that they might body breach it, they might. have to run up, lay under it, use bolt cutters, but like we'd literally have them like, you
I
know,
want to be the guy.
wrestle, and the winner would be the guy that breaches. Like that was the big thing that I thought was the best part about being in the infantry is if you got surrounded by people that cared about their job, everyone would compete to be better.
Yeah, that's I think it's an alpha male environment. Obviously, you get a bunch of dudes who are gung ho in the sense of wanting to either take on a new position of leadership or just be the best new guy that there is, or whatever you want to call it. It's like a bunch of guys competing to get to that next level.
Yeah, and
And
like for me, I just didn't want to look dumb. So like any position I was put in, I would just waste time reading all the manuals about it, all this because my biggest fear was like it's your turn to do whatever you're supposed to do and you look like a fucking idiot doing
yeah, and then that carries on with you for people don't
it. Yeah.
forget, people don't forget. Uh,
Nobody ever forgets.
so you guys get to this point where you're going down to 60% of your effective, numbers for deploying.
Yep.
No, that happens. You see some guys tuck their tail between their legs and get out of it, and then there's some guys who step up to the plate and they want to deploy. So you say this is 2012. When in 2012 did you go?
We deployed Black Friday.
Oh, so you okay? I had already came. I left I think in April of 2012 and then came back in end of October of 2012.
Yeah,
But
so I remember I got in the country just after Black Friday.
okay. You guys go to oh yeah, obviously you're Iraq previously. So th this is obviously all new for you and the guys that have never been to Afghanistan before. What are you thinking when you get into country? Like, what's your AO like?
So I was not aware of what RC we were going to. So like mentally, I had prepared myself for the north, right? Just like mountains, just sucking, right? Like all I did leading up to this was like cardio of just running uphill because right now I'm in charge of BCO sniper section. So it's me and I'm in charge of two other long gun kids. And when we drop to this 60% force, they tell me that they got to take the section from me. And of course, at this point, I'm like super boo boo. So I was like, well, what are you doing with the mortars? Are all the mortar men going? And they're like, no, we're only taking three of them as well. So me and the mortar section sergeant got together and we cross trained everybody. So I would take, me being the senior long gun guy, I would take the most junior mortar with me and he would have a mortar system. And if we needed to use the mortar system, I would assist him in using the mortar system. They needed to use a sniper rifle, he would assist me in that. So now I partnered my junior long gun guy with the mortar section sergeant.
Gotcha.
And then we put the two middle guys in the middle. So now each platoon, that's how we broke it, right? Because the Army breaks into threes constantly. So each platoon now, first, second, and third, have one sniper and one mortarman that are cross trained to help each other. So if something happens and they're laying 60s, 60 dude can set up his 60 and the sniper knows to assist him by just handing them rounds or if he needs to walk on stuff, he's trained how to walk that bubble back to where he
Nice, nice.
and then we train them how to spot trace and make minor corrections so that we could at least get a second round hit. And that was cool. Like I was excited that they were okay with that. So it's just two sergeants coming together and being like, yo, we really don't want to get split up, but we still want to use our weapon systems. And then we came up with a plan, told the captain about it, and he was like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. I was like,
All
thank
right.
you, Jesus.
Nice. So you guys you obviously do a little bit of this cross training prior to going on deployment, right?
Oh, this is like the 2 weeks in calf. Like
Oh, before, yeah, you guys are in Kandahar and you're like w doing your acclimatization period or whatever
yep.
before you go.
Yeah, so we literally drew guns, drew the mortar systems out, and literally like all we are doing is wasting our time cross training everything, right? Because I've never shot. I'm an 11 Bravo in the Army. That's a horrible
11
rifle.
Charlie, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm now I have to learn because I'm the guy with the most junior mortarmen. I have to be almost as good as the senior Charlie. So he's giving me like plotting board tests. how to use the 60s, how to use the 81s. They parked one striker with the 120, but like only he was supposed to deal with that. But like I
Yeah.
had to know enough to assist, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah, if you're on the FDC side, like you're directing, and I've never been on that side of things. I've always been on the side of calling for fire. So
yeah,
I wouldn't know shit about employing a mortar system, to be honest with you.
it is cool. Again, some people will probably comment, they're like, this is a horrible reference, but to me, I treated it like it was a different sniper rifle. Literally using a big ass round and arcing it in a general direction to get a hit. That's all I'm doing with a sniper rifle. I'm pointing it in the general direction. I'm arcing the round to a target. That's it. It's the same principle. The
Yeah.
aiming systems are different, but that's all you're doing. You're just shooting a bigger bullet.
Yeah, one's got a higher angle of trajectory and the other one's got a flatter one, but I get what you're saying. There's a relevance, they go hand in hand
Yeah,
in the
and
terminology.
like to me, it was cool now being armed to know how to do both.
Yeah.
And like I was getting super excited the one time that they're like, "Hey, we got a mortar mission," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I'm like running to the mortar pit, like just because that shit's cool.
Yeah.
Like if you've never gotten to hang rounds, hanging rounds is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I've never been able to do so. I mean, we had them. We had 81s. We had a couple 81s, and they would just be like dumping HE and white phosphorus. It was shake and bake, baby. Um, but yeah,
Dump
we
everything you have, but just being able to assist those dudes and help those dudes, like that was cool. And then we only got two sniper missions the whole deployment, and it was mostly Overwatch. But having them trained up enough that they were smart enough to like do our sector sketch of the city, figure out where our good points are going to be, where our white spots or black spots are going to be. Um, I didn't let them use the laser rangefinder, so they'd have to do the mill relation formula, and I made them measure doors and windows and tires ahead of time.
yeah,
So now they have like an average right before they go through the village. I'm having the private, with his little sector sketch telling me, I'm like, okay, how far is this door? And he like does his math. He's like, okay, this is 530 meters. Okay, okay, what about this door? And then when it's all done and they're about to enter the village, I'm like, cool. Dial your rifle for this. And if you have to shoot here, you're going to hold here. If you have to shoot here, you're going to hold here. And that's it. And he goes, wow, that makes it so much easier. And I'm like,
yeah, yeah. You're not like having to tell this kid how to adjust his, mills on his setting up his dope for different distances. You're just like, this is zeroed to this distance. If you need
yeah.
to
And
engage further, or you just little down,
everything
little
is,
up, left and right.
yeah, everything is KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
To set everybody up for success.
I
And
mean,
like,
you and I would like to think that keep it simple, stupid would be the way that it goes on a small, like, small unit leadership level.
yeah,
Normally, that is the way it goes. But once, you start adding some rank in there, that's when it starts
yeah.
to
I learned
deteriorate.
I learned that I learned that later on. But yeah, so did the whole Afghanistan deployment, got to carry my long gun around, dodging landmines, being in minefields, new experiences, learning.
Yeah.
And then we come back. And that's when I'm like, man, do I really want to be in the army?
And how many years you probably been in for what, like 5 years at this point when you get back?
Yeah, five and some change. Like borderlining on six.
Okay. So you're contemplating, do I really want to be in the army? Like after you come back from Afghanistan?
Yeah, because at this point I'm married, right? Um, and I'm like, man, like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, is this what I want to do, right? Like, we unfortunately had people in other companies that lost limbs. I'm actually going to his wedding this month. Win, cheer that dude on. But I'm like, man, do I really want to like go back and play the leg lottery again? Like, I'm getting a little older, so now I'm starting to think like, what are we doing there? Is it worth it? Blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah.
and those are the things you rattle around in your head. But we got thrown for a loop as soon as we got back. As soon as we got back, we were told we were being disbanded. Like our whole unit got disbanded. Um, Between our unit and another unit on JBLM, second ID, we had got caught committing a lot of war crimes, and they disbanded the fourth battalion. So I was in fourth battalion. I think third was the one that had the guy that went into the village and killed everybody, and I think second was the one that they did that they were throwing hand grenades at everything. Something loud went off, they just like threw a hand grenade at it. So second ID is no longer deployable, is what we
Really?
got told. And we were like, we thought it was like, like just somebody saying that.
Like
And then
Lance Corporal
finally,
Underground shit, like the,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And then the army came out and said that. like it was in the Army Times. And we're like, ah, fuck.
yeah.
So everybody tries to re-enlist to go somewhere else. Even me. I talked to my wife at the time and I was like, hey, you want to go to Italy? So I tried to re-enlist to go to Italy. But I'm not airborne qualified. So I had to get airborne en route, and they couldn't guarantee that. I'm like, you're gonna send me this unit with no airborne wings, and I'm gonna show up, and they're gonna be like,
Yeah, what's
what the fuck are
this?
we gonna do with you? You can't
Yeah.
jump, dumbass. So at this point, I'm kind of like, fuck, man. Like I'm at a weird point. Like the unit I grew up in is no longer there. They disbanded us. We get sent to different units on JBLM, and then they reflagged that entire unit over in Carson. And it was kind of somber when it just like when people leave the unit, you get like a certificate, you get an award, people do plaques, they
Right.
talk about you. Dude, we got back and it was like within less than fucking 90 days, everybody's gone.
Damn. So were
So
they just sending guys to different units where Army needed to plus up numbers or
yeah,
what?
yeah. Like so depending on what your background was, like because I had been in Striker for so long, they pretty much only try to keep you in Striker units then. Like they used to try to I guess they're supposed to, but it never worked for me. They're supposed to put you within heavy units, light units, airborne units, so you're well rounded. But I was on JBLM for 10 fucking years.
Damn. So you stayed in
All
the
I know
same
is,
place.
yeah, all I know is striker infantry. Um, so I get, sent down the street to a different brigade, and I show up there, and I'm just like, dude, do I really want to be here? Now I got to prove myself all over again to these dudes that I don't know. And I think the first like 90 days, I was kind of like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Well, and it's got to be tough too because the unit that you've been raised in the army with, they're disbanded. All your boys are sent to the winds. Like the guys that you've deployed with, what like this is a big culture shock, in the sense, any time that you go to a different unit, or you go to a different platoon, and like you said, you got to prove yourself. You've got to earn the trust of the guys that are already there that have a fucking tight knit unit. So that's an uphill battle, dude. Anybody
Well,
that's done that knows.
and we show up to this unit that is the people who committed said war crimes, and some of those people are still in the fucking unit,
Like
and they're
as they're
like,
waiting to be like charged or something, they're just
yeah,
like hanging.
yeah, they're like, yeah, this guy, and we're just like, what?
Well, didn't they make a movie out there, like the Kill Platoon or something, or the Kill Company,
Yeah,
whatever?
yeah,
I've seen the documentary before
yeah. They
too.
use one of the Skarsgård brothers to be the main character.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, I watched the actual. I don't know. I know they were the guys that were like saying that they Afghans would have like a frag or something, and then they'd like grenade, and then
Yeah,
they'd come up and just dump rounds into them or
yep.
whatever.
So I'm in that unit, and I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, most of these dudes are shit bags. Like, and this isn't like going from one unit to another and then always being like, well, my last unit was way better than this unit. Like, these dudes just literally don't give a shit, right? We got super overweight sergeants, shitbag specialists, and I'm just like, what the fuck? So, I sit down with the first sergeant. He's trying to figure out where to place me because they already have a guy in sniper section, and I don't have enough time to be a squad leader yet because all the other people they have filling squad leader slots have been in way longer than me. But I have over my team leader time. So I'm this in between. So if they put me as a team leader, it's like, okay, yeah, I've already done this. Like I'll be fine. But they won't screw somebody over by not giving me a squad. And that's what I thought I was going to do is go over there and take a squad. So I go over there and they give me a team, and I find out like the squad leader I have is only like 1 year in the army ahead of me. And he's a decent guy, but it's one of those like, fuck man, like I wish this was my squad, blah blah blah. So I'm like, man, do I want to wait? Do I want to do this? And I got so lucky that somebody from the old unit went to a different company and is now a first sergeant. Like he used to be a platoon sergeant, now he's a first sergeant. And there's a school coming down, and my name got dropped. So my sergeant major comes and finds me, and he goes, "Hey, who the fuck are you?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm Sergeant BB, blah blah blah." And he's like, "Why is this first sergeant from a different unit saying you should go to this?" And it's called the Advanced Marksmanship. And I was like, "Oh, it's because I was the guy who like led all the ranges and like cross trained everybody with all the rifles and like
Yeah.
because I was like, look, if I step on a landmine, I get shot in the face. I want you to still be able to use the sniper rifle semi effectively." So I
Like
cross trained
it's not
everybody.
just yeah, like it's not just a useless weapon system that nobody knows how to use.
Yeah, the little range that we ghetto made in Afghanistan, I like brand new privates. I'm letting them shoot, the SAS, the Barrett, the
Hell yeah.
2010, pistols, shotguns. I'm like, so I became the NCO that was like cool to let people use everything because I'm like, look, I want it to be used. So I go to this class and I'm having a phenomenal time. It's a 3 week class, does CQB, does long range, does rifle, does pistol. And I'm just, dude, I love it. I'm like, oh my God, this is what the Army's about. Like, and I graduated, top shot. And they asked if I want to come work there.
Dude, nice. Dream job.
So I go back to my unit and I'm like, yo, Sergeant Major, here's this Sergeant Major. Like, they want me to come work for them. Well, mind you, I just passed my promotion board. So now I'm about to be a staff sergeant. My sergeant major looks dead at me and he goes, "I'm not going to let you go as a staff sergeant because you still add to their numbers." So he would have a staff sergeant on his books that's not in his unit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he goes, "You can come back to me tomorrow and I could take your P status and you can go there as an E5, or you can get promoted and be a squad leader." And I didn't even like skip a beat. I was like, "No, take my P status." So the next day I show up to AMIC as a, brand new instructor. And I spent about 2.5 years in AMIC just having the fucking time of my life,
Yeah,
teaching
using
people
using the taxpayer funds to just dump rounds and unlimited ammunition, it sounds
all
like.
day, all day, just teaching. And I even come up with a plan when it's our off cycle from teaching a class that any student who had ever gone through, we can come help teach a PMI class before their ranges if we don't have a class going on. So like if you came through AMIC and your unit is going to do like some rifle training or whatever, we will show up and do the PMI before the range for you guys. So like we bring out all our stuff, our PowerPoints, like guns, dummy rounds, and like
Right.
we'll do all the dumb shit that nobody wants to do for you guys just to help. So it streamline it, and NCOs get to get their reps in actually doing it and not just teaching.
Yeah, that seems like it makes it like you guys are a one-stop shop for like a pop-up tent training
Yep.
source thing,
Oh, and,
like
and and we love it, and we can get ranges easier. So there's times where they come to us, and we'll just like, hey, we'll secure the range for you. We'll set it up. We'll call it in. We'll call the ammo in, and then you can just train on the range, and
no,
we'll close it up.
this is all still within the base that you're at, the JWT
JBLM.
JBLM. Okay. So it's just whatever units that are on that base, they have the ability to utilize you guys as, like the subject matter experts for teaching
Yep.
courses of fire or training guys to like the basic fundamentals and all that stuff.
Yep. So we get outside students that come in as well. So AMIC actually added an identifier of like small arms something. It
Okay.
just means you're an expert in carbine and pistol. because that's we were the last people to teach CPAC, combat pistol applications, because pistol was like a big no-no in the army. They just like gave it to you, but like nobody ever really lets you shoot it or like did a range for it.
Really?
Oh, dude, the most NDs that happen in the army are due to a Beretta.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the
Like
same
what?
thing in the Marine Corps. You just give it to some like staff NCO or officer that's definitely not trained well on it.
Yep.
See, that happens all the time. So at this point, while you're at this, you're spending 2.5 years, excuse me, instructing, soldiers on, whatever it may be in terms of running through courses of fire. Is this where the wheels start to kind of turn for you to think about starting your own business?
Yes. Well, it's because that at that point now I think I found my passion, and that's getting somebody on the range to have their aha moment
Yeah,
where it clicks, right? Like, we've taught them everything, but again, it's on them to then do it. And when you see dudes and it clicks, and then they're, going through the motions, shooting rifle, transition to pistol, doing it in rooms, you're like, yeah, I remember when that guy showed up and he fucking was loading his shit fucked up.
yeah,
So I was like, man, like, I'm like, how can I do this in the real world? At this point, I've been buying stuff from Tactical Tailored my whole career, and I formed like a bond with some of those people that work there. And they asked me if I could come to like SHOT Show with them and like help work the booth with
oh,
the nylon gear and stuff.
no
So,
way.
so
Seriously?
my first shot, you can look it up. My first SHOT Show was like 2015. And from there, I just every leave I took, I would go to SHOT Show or the NRA show with them. I would sit in and help like my experiences as a grunt, how I think pouches should be
Yeah,
done,
yeah.
and just offer insight. They taught me how to sew, which I was like I super geared up. So I loved it. I learned how to sew, made my own plate carrier, made my own chest rigs, like, got better
No
at making
shit.
ghillie
That's fucking
suits.
cool, dude. That's super cool.
So at this point, like it's the highlight of my career. Um, we're getting to go over on the other side of the fence with first group guys, go through their shooting schools, learn a higher level of shooting.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you on how, like, throughout that, like, different units may come in or whatever and utilize your ranges. And obviously, you said first group. Did they like bring you in the fold on that
So
what
what was
they?
cool is one of our instructors was a group guy.
Okay.
Um, so he like, was already a first group guy. He knew some guys over there. And we had an entire class of 19th group guys come through
And
for
that's
AMIC.
those. That's the National Guard guys, right?
Yep. And they were going through AMIC just to like as a prep for their cephalic. And I mean, they're all pretty squared away dudes. Youngest dude was a E6 that was like 35, like right, like they're all older. They all got deployments. It's just them working out the kinks, getting the rust out, and they spoke highly of me and another guy. So they were short dudes for their cephalic. So they're like, "Hey, do you want to come through cephalic with us and just be a member?"
And what's the acronym for that school or the?
Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat.
Okay.
So it's a 6 to 8 week school on just CQB. And me, like, I love knowledge, right? I just want to shoot, get better, learn as much as I can. So I'm like super excited to go to this school, right? I got all my shit set up, like, and I show up day one, right? It's all flat range shit day one. And, they're doing evals and all this. And there's this one team sergeant that is just smoking the dog piss out of his team for just being fucked up. And I'm like, I thought SF dudes were all like cool guy, ball cap, like everyone calls each other by like Steve, and this dude is just fucking these dudes up, and I'm just like, trying not to look in that
Yeah, yeah.
general
Like,
direction.
don't look and don't get involved. Just
Yeah, yeah,
stay away.
because it's a hot day and we're all just wearing t-shirts. So like I'm not wearing like my unit patches that show I'm just like some basic army grunt. I'm just like, don't look that way.
You're like, what are you over there? Get over here.
Yeah, and so the second day I show up with like a ball cap, I took my patches off. Like I'm like, don't look out of place.
Yeah. Well,
But then obviously when it came to CQB, I we were behind. So they catch us up pretty quick. And then it ends up being one of the coolest classes that I got to attend beside the Lovis course. And it's just they incorporate everything, right? Like by the end of the class, you fast rope in on a building, you have charges, you have shotguns, everybody is shooting rifle, pistol, multiple house, multiple cells, you know, and like they put you in leadership positions.
yeah.
You'll be like the assault force sergeant major, and here I am, just an E5 grunt, but I am the assault force. Like
Yeah, like no
one guy.
notionally for like your the training evolution,
Yep,
obviously.
yep. Just to get graded.
Yeah.
So you know, one guy plans the egress route, and I'm like, hey, I'm planning the actions on, right? This cell's going to breach this way. This cell's going to breach this way. You have to clear this building and these rooms before we can clear this building and this room, so there's no crossfire. Like, and I'm in heaven. I'm just like, I'm learning so much every day, but I know it's got to come to an end eventually because you can only be in
Yeah.
an instructor position for so long.
And this is obviously coming up on this 10 year, like this 10-year journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I only spent one more year out. So I got to go through a couple shooting courses that they put on, and then now I have to go back to the line.
Yeah.
So uh, the day I leave, I show up back to my unit. I automatically get promoted to staff sergeant, and I get given a squad, and I'm just like, oh my god, privates again.
Yeah, because
Like
you've been
that's
playing by
insane.
like big boy rules essentially for the last
Yes,
2.5 years.
I'm just like and it is like of course the day I show up they give me like this brand new kid who's just so fucked up and I'm like okay, 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 back to the army. Like I get it. Like this I got to have fun. Let's go back to the army. So come up with these experiments I used to do of allowing people to be big kids. Just I don't yell at them. I'm just chill. I'm like, hey, just get this done. And next thing I know, I was a squad leader for I don't know, a month or two. Then I got promoted to be the Weasel, which is the weapons squad leader, which is supposed to be the most senior squad leader. And then one of the platoon sergeants got in trouble or something. I don't know. And instead of picking one of the other Weasels that have double my time in the Army, Captain Petraeus picks me to be the platoon sergeant.
Nice.
So now I'm an E6 platoon sergeant. That's like I've never been in that spot. I'm super junior, and now I'm learning a new position. And like tactical wise, it's the easiest position in the fucking world.
Yeah, but you're talking about delegation between your troops and
Yes,
being monitoring all these fucking minions that are running around and all the
and I
madness that
never
goes.
did
Yeah.
that.
No.
Like I got trackers on trackers tracking people's dental records, their shot records, like their APFTs, like who's going through marriage counseling, who's going through financial counseling, and I'm like, this is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, you wonder why your platoon sergeant, just gets
Yeah,
like
yeah.
ages day by day and they get old and angry and they just want to punch everybody in the
You,
fucking face.
yeah, you see every platoon sergeant, and you're like, "Oh yeah, man, we're ready, like 45," and he's like, "I'm 32." You're like,
Yeah.
"Holy shit!"
Yep. Dude, I said the exact same thing to my, we were like sitting there smoking a cig one time and my platoon sergeant, Michael Crippen, he was with the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines in Ramadi in 2004. And he was just, that was like his first deployment. Um,
Jesus,
and no, I'm sorry. He invaded Iraq. I forget what unit he was with, but anyways, I just remember being like, "Hey, Gunny." I was like, "How old are you? Like 50?" And he like looked over at me. He always did the heart punch, like punches me in the chest as hard as he can. He's like, "I'm 35 years old, asshole." And everybody starts laughing and they're like, "Gunny, you're old. You look old as shit."
dude, it ages you, and you think that like shit quits rolling downhill at a certain point. It doesn't. Being a platoon sergeant, you still got to answer to a first sergeant who's getting shit on by a sergeant major, who's
Yep.
getting shit on by a command sergeant major, who's getting shit on by the core command sergeant major.
Yeah.
So um, they asked me if I want to reenlist. They're like, hey, are you going to re-enlist? We'll send you to SLC. You can make E7. And at this point, the Tack Taylor thing is just fucking cool.
Yeah.
And I tell them no. They got a little mad. Um,
Like kind
yeah,
of
we
like
tried.
like were they telling you like you're not gonna make it in the real world? Like you
Oh
need the
yeah, yeah,
army, all that. Yes, all that shit.
yeah. No, I ran into like my first sergeant in Iraq, who's now like a command sergeant major, and he's like, "Yeah, I see you at Tack Taylor doing stuff. Like, you shouldn't get out of the army though. Like, you're never gonna do that for a living." And I'm just like, "Oh my god!" Like, and I took it both ways, right? I take it as they want to keep somebody in that gives a shit, right?
Yeah.
I get that. But then on the flip side, I'm like, don't you want me to be happy? Like, don't you just generally want people around you to be happy or like
Hell
not even
no,
successful,
bro.
but like learn what they, like, hey, tries this. Like, if it
Dude,
works, cool. If it doesn't, like, the army's always going to be here. It's not like you can't get back in.
dude, they're you know why? It's because they're all fucking miserable because they stayed in or like something, the shitty cards that they got dealt in life. And not that staying in as a career,
Yeah.
soldier or Marine is a bad thing, but a lot of those guys that had that mindset about like you wanting to get out because they're just I want to work for Tactical Tailor. I want to go fucking
Yeah.
start my own fire like consulting and training business. Like what the fuck?
So, so I got 6 months left. I get sent up to brigade because they can't use me for anything, right? Like, I can't be a weasel. I can't go back to being a weasel. I can't be a platoon sergeant because they want somebody else in the spot. So I go up to brigade headquarters and I'm like, oh no, like, what the fuck am I going to do at brigade headquarters? Like, make maps or something? Like, well, there's a platoon up at brigade headquarters for the full bird colonel and the command sergeant major. And you're like in charge of the guys that like are under them. And they give me that slot. And this is the first time, mind you, I've ever been in charge of a woman. The first time I've ever been in charge, we just got a Sikh, like,
Yeah, with the headdress and everything, his
turban,
turban.
beard.
Yeah.
First time I've ever been in charge of majors. Like, they have to report into me before they go do shit. First time I've ever had warrant officers attached to me. So that, to me, I'm like, oh my God, like, what the fuck do I do with my hands? And let me tell you what, that was the biggest learning experience I think I've ever had to do with just human beings in general, to try to balance everybody's, you know, like even just
Like the
administering.
differences in all these people, like it's like all these
Yeah,
different jobs that are there, different religions, and like that was like one thing about, I mean, I guess religion, whatever, but just like the male female divide, and then job duties, whether you're a grunt or a pogue, and how
yeah,
people automatically differentiate that itself. Like I've never had to really work. I mean, a couple times I've seen female Marines, but in the 5 years that I spent in the Marine Corps infantry, I never like worked hand in hand with a
yeah.
female
So
Marine.
so I'm like, okay, like garrison wise, I'm like, all right, it might not be too hard. Well, the problem is they have a NTC rotation coming up, and I have to be a part of it, so I can't turn all my stuff in.
Great.
So now I'm going to NTC as like the platoon sergeant for the colonel and the command sergeant major, and it's basically making sure all their shit's squared away. And mind you, I don't know how to do any of this shit up here. We have like these commo dudes that aren't like, they deal with like fucking Starlink and like satellites and shit. And I'm like, hey man, are you doing your? They're like, yeah, yeah, of course I am. I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know what this is. You could be bullshitting me right now. Like, I would have no fucking clue because there's only like two other infantry dudes up there, and they're like privates and like a specialist because they drive the Humvees and the Strikers for the colonel and stuff. So like we have a major that's like just supposed to control air assets. We have a chief that like controls fucking ammo or whatever. So all these people, and most of them outrank me. So I'm like, hey man, did you turn in your report? And, like, Colonel told me to tell you to fucking do. That was the worst part. Is like I'm always being told by somebody to tell somebody else to do
Yeah,
something.
you're just the messenger, dude. You're like
Yeah,
the yeah,
dude.
you're a glorified secretary for the BC and the sergeant major.
Yeah, you're
And I'm
100%
not saying that
correct.
as like a negative thing. I just that's
No,
like the in layman's
you're
terms, you're
completely
just
correct.
yeah.
The only flip side that I thought was cool is the command sergeant major is so supportive of me getting the fuck out and doing my own thing. And our colonel was a Delta guy, and he had to come back and do some colonel time in the army so he could go get his star. So now I get to literally sit in this dude's office and this dude's vehicle and just learn. So I'm asking him like, strategic stuff, like how to plan, brigade level stuff. And he lets me sit in on all this stuff when he's briefing lieutenant commanders on what he wants them to do in this battle. And I'm just sitting there like with my notebook and shit, right? Like I got a neck tattoo, like, and I'm the youngest ranking dude, and I'm 20 years younger than everyone in the room.
Yeah.
So I learned so much working for those two. If you're listening to this and you get stuck up at brigade, try to learn as much as you can because I learned stuff that I wish I would have learned at a very younger age. So it would have made sense why we were doing what we were doing.
Yeah, that's a good insight to taking advantage of opportunities like that because you're on the known, like the ins on
Yeah.
how it all plays out and what they're thinking at that like higher level. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So fast forward, we get done. I'm turning my stuff in. I already have my desk at Tac Taylor ready. I signed my DD 214. I literally walk into my office and I do a year over at Tac Taylor working as their SOCOM and military program manager.
Nice. That's
Um,
pretty fucking
I
cool.
enjoyed it. I loved every minute of it. I also learned desk job is not for me. I did it for a whole year just to say I did it, but I immediately learned that I did not want to have a desk job. Like
Okay.
I traveled tons, I got to go to all these shows, all the stuff people want to do in the gun industry. I got to do it. It was fun. I learned as a human being, I cannot spend the majority of my day at a desk doing entry or like
Right,
stuff.
right. I feel you. So let me ask you this then. Like you've made this transition out of the army after spending 10 years, two deployments, Afghanistan, Iraq and Afghanistan. You've been in these leadership positions and like the army's been a big part of your life. When you make this transition out and like, yeah, you're at Tech Taylor, are there things that you start to think about that maybe you made the wrong decision by getting out of the army?
Oh, 100%. You'll always second guess yourself. I think the transition was a little easier for me, and this is, another notch for Tac Taylor. At the time, the CEO was a former Ranger back in the late 80s, early 90s, and the vice president uh, was a cavalry scout guy that was in Iraq at one point too.
Okay.
So like they knew, like they get it, right? They're both veterans, and the majority of the people there, minus a few, were all veterans. So they get it. But that's always in the back of your head. And you got to think, I'm at Tac Taylor, and my job is literally to go on base and meet with people and show gear, develop new gear. So literally, I think the next week I was at work, I was at my old unit, like in tiger stripe pants and plate carrier, watching their live fire runs as a civilian now.
That's pretty crazy. That's most people don't have unless you go and be like a contractor. I know there's guys that work in because I was stationed in 29 Palms. So like there's plenty of companies out there that doing like contracting work and there's guys that will transition right into that after their time in service. But
Yeah.
I
So I
got
literally just like started growing my hair out. Like, so literally, 6, 7 months later, the same people I was in the army with, I'm talking to, but now I just have long hair about getting them Tac Taylor gear. And it made me miss like, like I got to watch privates that are like, hey, Sergeant BB, and I'm like, hey, I'm civilian now. My name's Brent. They're like, hey, I'm getting promoted to sergeant. Can you come to that? And I remember that dude showing up to the unit, and I'm like, oh
yeah,
my
like,
god,
holy shit, man. Yeah, time
this
flies
asshole a
by. Yeah.
sergeant? Like, so like that I think was different that most people don't get to see. Because when most people get out, they move back home and like, but I'd already bought a house here, and I
Yeah.
got a job, so I'm literally on the base that I was serving on for 10 years talking to people still. And it was weird. It makes you miss it more. But then, there's days where it's pouring ass rain or snowing, and you're like, ha ha, I
Yeah,
don't
you're
have
like
to do
I'm not in the field. Now with that though, Are there things that you struggled with in your personal life? Maybe like,
Oh,
if you don't want to dive
100%.
into like,
No,
with
no,
like
I'm
family
all about it.
relationships, like struggling
So,
with alcohol or, like what were your coping mechanisms for some of the stressors that you were taking on now?
so the I made my marriage last while I was in the army. When I got out, being out, I spent more time with my wife, which then I realized we didn't have as much in common as I thought because I was always gone, right? I'm always in the field or, deployed, or we're going to Yakima or NTC or JRTC. So I ended up actually getting a divorce outside of the army due to, I think, almost spending too much time. Like I had more time home.
Yeah.
And I I think I drank the same amount. We're infantrymen, like we just drink, right? Like I never saw it as like a coping mechanism. The one thing I would say I started to dig heavily into was like I needed my own personal time, and that was like the gym.
So did
So
you
like
use the gym as like a heavy outlet where like you're going and like working off frustration or any of the mental
but
shit
to
that
the
you're
point
dealing
where
with?
I would like turn my phone off. Like if I was at the gym, no one could contact me. So that's like 2.5 hours of like you ain't getting a hold of me. I mean, even if there's an emergency, I would answer.
Right.
And that was not good, right? Like that was me being selfish of like, this is the only time I get to myself now. This is what I want to do. I had just moved my mom up because my old man had died of cancer. So now I'm in a household with like, at the point, my wife that like things are on the rocks, and now my mom lives with us. So I'm like trying to like balance that,
Right.
balance missing the army. That's when I go to the National Guard recruiter because I'm like, I kind of just miss still teaching like army dudes and like what do I want? Like what am I gonna do? Right. The tack tailor thing was decent. Um, After a year I left to do a gig at a gun company because I wanted to do more rifle stuff as opposed to nylon. So like helping design products and shit like that. And I worked for that company for about 90 days. I was like, yo, this is trash. And that's when I started to think like, man, I've only been out of
What
the army for a year and a half.
what was it that made you think that it would like is it just the environment that you're in, the people that you're working on? Because I want like guys to
Yeah, so
hear that they're not the
I
only
was the only
one.
veteran. Yep,
Okay,
I was the
okay.
only veteran at this company that everybody wore a fucking collared shirt or a tie to work. And it wasn't a dress code. They chose to wear that, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Right.
Like I literally show up wearing what I'm wearing now. I got a fucking cut off shirt, shorts, flip flops, you know, because they're like, yeah, there's no dress code. I was like, okay, cool. I'm the only one with sleeve tattoos, a neck
Yeah.
tattoo, like, and these dudes are showing up in like collared shirts and ties on purpose. And I was like, did I not get the memo? Like, and mind you, I'm the only one carrying a gun, and I got
Yeah,
in
I was gonna
trouble for
say,
that.
you probably got like a Glock 19 stuffed in your butt cheeks, ready to pull it out of your board shorts, like ready to
Yeah,
go.
I had the security guard come ask me. He's like, hey man, he gets real close to me, and I'm like, he's like, you got a gun? I was like, yeah. I think he thought I was gonna lie, and I think he like saw me on the security camera with it. I was like, yeah, I got a gun. He's like, oh, you're not allowed to have a gun. I was like, we make guns. Yeah, yeah, but you're not allowed to have them on the premise, right? Because there's like
What?
key cards to get
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah, right, right, right.
yeah. Do some research. You can figure out who the gun company is, but I'm not gonna say it out loud.
No,
But
yeah, somebody will figure it out.
so I go to the president and I'm like, hey man, I, if I can't carry a gun, I'm not gonna work here. Like I'm gonna be honest with you. And he writes me a little permission slip, almost, if you will, to the security guys of like, this guy is allowed to carry a gun.
Hell yeah.
But it was the fact that that had to happen.
Well, but you gotta remember, dude. Now you're in the civilian world. Not everybody is somebody that's competent. Like if you look at most security companies out there, right? Because I worked for a private security contractor for a little while after I got out of the Marine Corps, and um, I did like legit contract, like not just the mall cop stuff.
Yeah.
But you look at some of the guys that they'll end up taking on, and the requirement for entry level positions are very minimum. And I mean, even at a company like that, some of those guys aren't trained to the effectiveness that you are, spent time in the military, and like that competency and the comfortability that comes with keeping a firearm on your person. A lot of other people do not have that.
Yeah, and this is when it starts dabbling in the me understanding the civilian mindset. Um, so 90 days later, I'm no longer at this company, and technically, at that point, I'm jobless. And things are on the rocks with the lady, and I'm just like, here it is. Like, I'm gonna be that, homeless veteran, like with a divorce and like crippling depression. And I started teaching classes in the community. So like we'd link up with other people at this area and shoot guns. And I was like, hey, do you guys want me to like, set up some courses of fire and like, have like a rhyme or reason to this? So we're not just like
Mag
kind of
dumping
just
into somebody's like old flat screen.
yeah. And I was like, because I don't like to shoot guns unless I have a training objective, right? It's like the
Yeah,
gym, right? I don't go to the gym and just, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to do some of these, some of
pick
those. I'm
something
like,
up.
no, no,
Yeah.
like these are the sets I'm doing. This is how much weight. This is how many, like I have everything planned out, right? Little OCD. So I was like, all right, yeah. So I set one up and it's all veterans that go. And then everyone had a blast. Like, hey, man, when you doing the next one? I was like, oh, I didn't know this is going to
Yeah.
be a thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, I'll set up the next one. And a couple of the veterans were like, hey, can I invite some civilian friends? I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, if you trust them and they're safe, okay. So we set up another one, different topic, and the veterans are doing fine. The civilian dudes, that's when I realized they don't have a base level of training.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, no, we'll help you out. We'll, square you away. And then it just every month. So since 2018 into 2019, up until the last 6 months, I had held a free training class every month for that many years,
No
covering
shit.
topics of rifle, pistol, AK, submachine gun, concealed carry. I even bought a vehicle that we could shoot through the windshield so people could learn
Right.
bullet deviations, how to fight around vehicles. We ended up doing that class like 3 different times. So like I paid a guy who had a Jeep because I'm like, your windshields are like $100. You just shoot through your shit. Pull all your doors off. If somebody shoots your subframe, I'll pay for that. Like, um, and so I just start teaching these classes, and then I start to just I'm like, let's just do some wild shit, right? So we did SUT where dudes would break into 2 4-man teams. I'd give them a smoke grenade. I'd teach the team leader how to be a team leader. He would bound his guys up, realize that he has the flank left or right, put them on the high side, have talking guns, control his rates of fire, have a lift and shift fire signal that's comms and an alternate, like a flaming rock or VF-17 panel, and then lead them through the LOA and establish another LOA, and then I'd call index. And mind you, by this time, there's maybe 3 dudes out of 50 that were
Know
ever
what they're
military.
Oh, that we're never in the military, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, okay, okay.
So I mean, I'm telling you, like we have, a girl that draws comics for a living, right? She draws animated titties and shit. And she's, aiming at these targets, doing mag changes, throwing smoke grenades, bounding up, bounding back, flanking, because people wanted to learn that. They wanted to get outside of just everyone shooting at the same piece of steel.
Yeah, that or like going to like an indoor range and just shooting at a target at 5 meters in front of you or some shit,
Yes.
like a little outside the box, of their wheelhouse. Something that makes them actually think like, oh, this is actually pretty fucking fun.
So like one of the last ones, I got a Chevy Suburban from a buddy. We cut a turret into it. It's actually just a trash can lid that opens. Built a bench seat so you could literally run a vehicle crew and you could run a whole fire team in the back.
No
And we
shit.
taught them how to do survivability drills with a belt-fed gun. So like, all right, come up, you're pressing the
Yeah.
terrain, you can engage targets, come back.
Yeah, like a hot and cold position, for whatever you're doing. Yeah.
And we started to teach them logistics too of like, okay, look, if this is the objective you're taking and you guys got to bound through and all this, this is roundabout how many rounds you're going to deplete. So this is how much rounds you would need to keep in the vehicle to then take another objective or go back to whatever your higher headquarters in to get bullets, ammunition, right? Like we call the LACE report, liquid ammo casualties, you
Yeah,
know.
we call that ACE report, just ammo, casualties, equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
added liquid, right?
Yeah.
Our Army's like, you need water.
Yeah.
But so we were teaching civilians this, and they loved it. And mind you, this is me teaching a free class. Like donations are welcome, but I never charged anybody
Right.
this. So probably about 2020 was when I started like, there's so many people that show up. I can only cover one or two topics relatively okay. Like I can't go too in depth because there's too many people that
Yeah.
I got to cycle through. So then I started teaching, like, hey, look, I got a private range with my old Cephalic instructor. If you want like a one-on-one or a small group, we could do a class, but it'll cost this due to steel and time and all that. And I started doing that left and right. We went and got my old science instructor that was attached to AMIC and have him come out to teach people mental stuff. And we started focusing it more on the mental aspect of shooting, and then shooting was the second part. So we have like, cones with lights, so you got to memorize drills. We have these glasses that show your focal point, so we see what you see, so
No
we can see when
shit.
you're yeah, so we can see when you're not like actually looking at your gun to load it or not looking at your piece of cover you're going to
No
next.
way. That's pretty fucking cool. I didn't even know that there was shit like that out there. I'm still
Yeah,
just on like I got a Mantis Blackbeard in the X10 and I just do like dry fire. Not thinking I'm fucking doing it all like
yeah, so we have some the tools we have access to are very high. It's not just me being an infantryman, like, hey, I know everything, right? Like I'm constantly learning as well. Like I try to tell people, the term from like jujitsu, willing to be a white belt. That's the lowest belt. Always be willing to learn new things and see what you can add it to help somebody else. So
yeah.
I went and got a degree in applied science to learn better on how people's brains work, that come up with a better way to teach, right? Because everybody learns at different levels, everybody learns at different times and skills, and somebody might be a kinesthetic learner, somebody might PowerPoint better, and I wanted to be the guy that could teach anybody. So we just learned how to teach somebody better and then applied it to firearms.
Yeah. So
And
you
that,
took it outside the box in the sense of being able to, really craft and hone your ability to be an instructor. Like that's what you're, you did it in the army and then now you're like just multiplying or, like adding on to that. And now
yeah,
you've created a, solid baseline for you. Like where we were talking about earlier, like that level of I don't know, capability, and like how you've taken it from, like down here or whatever, and then adjusted the bar up here and it's just continuing to, move to the next level.
yeah, because to me, it's, you don't want to live off past accomplishments.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, oh, back in my day, I used to do XYZ. It's like, okay, well, are you
Uh,
still doing it?
I always
You,
say the typical is like the high school quarterback. Like you go to a high school reunion, he's like, "You remember when I threw that touchdown pass senior year?" It's like, dude,
yeah,
you're 33 years old, man.
yeah.
Fucking let's
So my thing is like, what am I still doing today? So every day, I'm lucky I have access to a range. So I shoot, 3 times a week. I lift 5 times a week. I do jujitsu twice a week. And I just try to come up with better ways of teaching people, right? I've been lucky enough that all my students have come from like word of mouth. So I didn't have to advertise.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how's that running for you now that you kind of, have developed this I don't want to say like not a niche, but you've got your own way of doing things in like the courses that you're covering or the periods of instruction that you're covering. Are you staying pretty fluent with like once a week or every other week?
Yeah, so I do a minimum of 2 classes a week. And the reason why, like, I didn't
Damn.
I didn't want to have a website where I'm like, all right, guys, April 19th, pistol one,
Right.
50 people, like pay me this much, because it's not personal. When somebody contacts me through somebody who's already been to a class, they already know that I'm like, okay, what's your background? What do you feel is your level of competency? What are some of your objectives or goals prior to this class and after this class? Every class I try to tell people is different because it depends on you, the shooter, or you, the group, how far you progress or how fast you progress. If you guys are more accurate, I set up faster drills to push your accuracy. Like I got a guy who, he sells guns for a living, and all the people he sells guns to, he tells them they have to take a class from me
No
for him to
shit.
sell them a
That's
gun.
that's that's fucking marketing it as a, free marketing right there, dude.
Yeah.
That's pretty
But
sick.
the idea behind it is he tells them, like, look, you're going to go to this class and he's going to show you everything you don't know, but he's going to help you start to learn how to train yourself. So the biggest thing I try to tell people is like, I'm going to give you enough rope to hang yourself with, and I want you to fail because only through failure are you really going to learn. And that's something, unfortunately, probably in the Corps and me in the Army, we weren't allowed to fail. So we were only ever allowed to succeed to a certain point, because to succeed past that, you have to fail. So I allow these students to do these drills to where they don't hit anything and they're like, oh my God. I'm like, no, 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 that's fine. You know that you're not at that level yet. So let's resort back to the beginning of the drill and try to get that down to where you can do that 100% of the time.
Right.
If you're still doing the first level of the drill and you can't get it right all the time, that's fine. You don't need to progress yet. But then if there's another kid in the class who can do that every time perfectly, then we reduce target size or we add multiple rounds. So we
It's just
have
ways
this,
of like implementing your like levels of progression per student while running like a combined class. So,
yeah.
you've got, I assume that it's not just you, like you've got another RSO or like an
Oh,
instructor out
always.
there
So
with you.
I
Yeah.
I never go, and that's another thing I like when I see instructors, and it's one dude and 20 students. I'm like, well, yeah, whatever. Like I want it to stay as personal as possible. So I try to maintain a 1-to-4 ratio minimum.
Yeah, that's solid.
So if I ever go, like, even sometimes with a 7-man class, I'll invite one of the guys that I've trained so he helps me. But the idea behind it is I want it to be personal. Training like that should be personable. You should learn all their idiosyncrasies that they do when they're like doing a mag change or where they're transitioning a pistol, so that you can help each person individually as you go through the line, not just be like, oh, hey, your grip, oh, your stance. I'm like, oh, hey, did you notice every time you go to do a mag change, you grab your carrier like this? Try it this way and try to look at the mag, try to look at the mag well, see what's going to help you achieve a better thing. And then everything to me is quantifiable. So everything's done on a shot clock once we get through the basics, so that they have this algorithm, right, wrong, or indifferent. At the end of the day, they know these drills that they've done, there's a time standard and a hit standard,
Right.
and it's repeatable for them. So every drill I teach them, if they go into the woods and they have a shot clock, one piece of steel, and they can, map out cones, they can repeat this drill by themselves. Now they can start to see if they're getting better or if they're retrograding and getting worse.
Yeah, that's good because giving them something like I think that's what a lot of instructors, they're out there running small businesses and doing like tactical firearms oriented stuff.
It's become the
They're
new T-shirt thing for
Yeah,
our.
well, and it's like, fuck, it's hard to, I don't want to say there's a lot of people out there with a lot of knowledge that come from different backgrounds, and everybody has a way of implementing their training onto people. And if it's something that you can make a living off of, like would I love to do that? Fuck yeah, I would love to do that. Being in the Chicagoland area, there's not a single outdoor range unless it's like an hour outside, an hour and a half outside of the Chicagoland area. Everything's an indoor range with 25 meters. I have a range that I used to work at that I have access to be able to do that at. And it's like the type of people though, They're few and far between, at least from what I've, well, neither here nor there, whatever. But it's some people want to make that, that dream come true of being a firearms instructor, or owning their own range, or running courses and classes. And for you to have
So
gone out and taken that step to be able to do it, like you obviously have, more than 5 years in the Army. You've taken that route of gone through the instructor school and done all the
so that's
CP.
the thing. There's two parts to that. Do I think anyone can do it? The answer to that is yes, but there is a big caveat. I don't know why people want to fancy themselves as a teacher or instructor. It's become this new thing, this new fad where, like, before just being good at shooting was what you were after. Now they want to be like, well, I teach people. And I don't know where it came from because to me, when I was an instructor in the army, there's times where I'm like, fuck, am I qualified to do this? Like, I remember when you had to have a decade of experience to have an opinion on something. But now I see dudes who, they come out of the woodwork and they're like, hey, I'm a tactical instructor, blah, blah, blah. And like they always blur their faces and stuff like that. And then later on, when you find out who they really are, it's because 2 years ago they were working at AutoZone. And now they shot a pistol and now they want to teach other people how to shoot it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's wrong. You can do whatever you want in this world. But my thing is like, go earn it. Go earn, and that's, again, like there's gonna be people who aren't veterans that like, think, oh, you're a bro vet. I'm like, no, dude, like I learned to have a base because I had people over me that would watch me constantly to make sure I did it right. The problem with the majority of these dudes that don't have a military background is they just went on a flat range and did whatever they wanted. They don't
Yeah.
have a good base or fundamentals, and they've never been critiqued. That's why you don't see them taking other people's classes. I take other people's classes all the time because something that they might have a better way of presenting it. And also, as an instructor, you should put yourself in the student role as much as possible
Oh,
so
fuck
you
yeah.
remember so you remember what it's like. Because too many people become instructors and get a huge ego because they're always up talking.
Well, I think it's all personality traits as well. Some people you can see who's been around and who's going to be around, and you see the ones that are going to filter through. They'll falter. Yeah, they like those guys with the blurred faces, or they want to. I don't know. I'm not one to judge because I'm not an instructor, nor would I. I mean, I've done stuff like that before, but by no means am I a subject matter expert. Like I have so many things that I need to improve on. But that's like the thing that I wanted to show with your experience is the fact that there's a lot of guys out there and girls, in their relative, MOSs or job duties, and they get out and they may have a niche with being confident and competent in a certain area. And you knew that already, and then you went and you ran with it. And it started off as something as small as putting together a range day with a couple people, and then that turned into what it is now. So with the hard work and dedication behind it, there is ability for you to be able to be successful on your own and not rely on whatever corporation that you work for, or job that you have, or being, like you can get out of the military and find success on your own.
And especially for people who have infantry backgrounds, right? Like that was the biggest funny thing always was like, oh, you're an infantryman. That's cool. What are you going to do afterwards?
Yeah.
Right? Most people are like going to be a cop or something. And like, we all thought about being a cop at one point, but I was like, what can I take from the army that it taught me and teach other people? And I think being in the infantry and being a grunt, there's a lot of options you have out there to teach people.
Yeah.
Physical fitness being one, mental aptitude to be able to deal with adversity. Like I'm lucky enough to know a lot of people that were grunts that got out and got high level degrees and basically teach people how to cope with stuff.
Yeah.
And that shit's cool as fuck. And then again, I'm a guy, I like guns. I've gotten very, very lucky that I had good instructors that let me become an instructor, that let me learn to be a better instructor and held me accountable, that I can still do this today. And my instructor from the Army lives down the street from me. So whenever I come up with new ideas or drills, I literally run it by him. I talk it out loud, I walk through it, and he critiques either things I say, how I teach it, or what. And then I go back, read his critiques. If it's
Then yeah,
valuable, change. If not, or I can articulate in a better way, change. And before I ever teach it to new students, I've already taught it to an instructor that's way more qualified than me and had him
and you got the
refine it.
ominous dominus on it, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's the thing I feel like if I can stretch, stretch that to everybody is like have people poke holes in your plan and it'd be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a plan and then people start poking holes and you're like, oh damn, that sucks. Okay, I didn't think about that. But don't just destroy the plan. Fix what they poked holes in, and then come back and let them try to poke holes again. Like
Yeah.
I feel like we get to a point, especially as we get older, and like being a veteran, we start judging everybody, and we don't allow people to have their input on something. It's like, oh well, that guy only did X, Y, Z. Like he doesn't have anything to offer me. And I'm like, dude, I run stuff like one of my training partners was a submariner, right? He did commo stuff for a sub, but we've trained him up enough shooting and instructing what to look for that when I teach certain classes, we'll come back and we're loading ammo and he's like, hey man, you forgot this and this. And I was like, oh fuck, you're so right, you know.
Yeah,
But
you got
just
to
having
support,
people
yeah, having the group, the people that are around you, your tribe, people that are involved in like your little
and they
community that you've
hold you
created.
accountable.
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge important part of it is, you know, you have to one advocate for yourself, but you have to surround yourself with people that are going to push you and propel you in the right direction and keep you on track to not be a shithead and falter. And if you're gonna like get depressed one day and give up on this, then you wouldn't be where you are today. And you got a long, 10 years in the service is quite a long time. It goes by fast, but the experience that you've gathered and gained from that and the life lessons, and obviously these are things that you implement on your students. I'm sure it correlates while you're running classes, and that's awesome. That we need more people that are out there that are willing to provide the knowledge, and you've gone and done it for, free of charge. Obviously, people need to make a living, so nobody should bash you on the fact that you're out there taking the things that you've sacrificed, um, to make a living on. That's weak, of somebody to get. They're just jealous at that point. But we've
It,
covered. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
I
You're
was just gonna
correct. I
say
was
we
just
we've
agreeing
we've
with you.
we've covered a lot of shit, and leading, towards the end here, we'll get it wrapped up. I always ask, how, and this is focused on the Marine Corps. I always ask the guys like, how did the Marine Corps leave like legacy and tradition on you, or like what in did do you carry this day with you that obviously you learned in your time in the army. So how do you uphold those traditions and the legacy that was instilled in you during your time in service in the army as a civilian now?
So I would say the biggest thing is you take care of the generation that came before you or the generation that paved the way. Been very fortunate enough that I learned how to go parachute static line as a civilian with a group that's all military, and they do World War II jumps out of a World War II plane for World War II veterans. And to me, taking care of the generation that came before us and just talking to them and listening to them. And I was lucky enough last week, I was in Florida.
I saw
I
that. Yeah.
jumped, I jumped a C-47 that was in the war. It was an Overlord,
D-Day. Yeah.
the Berlin drops and Market Garden. And I got to spend time with a 101st paratrooper that served and let him just talk about life. Like not just talking about war. I just let him talk to me about getting old. He's 98 and he skydived. Like
Yeah.
crazy, right? Like and I just let him talk about life and I asked him the same questions we talked about. It was like, what was it like when you got back? the war's over. What do you do for a living? What did you miss? Did you stay in contact with the boys? Like, did you go through depression? Like, did you consume too much alcohol? Did you get a divorce? Like, and it's the same stuff we just talked about. And like for a 98-year-old man, he's super coherent, very all there. Like his body's just shutting down, but
Yeah.
mentally he was all there. And he biggest thing he said was like he's like you take care of the dudes. You try
Yep.
to he's like one of my best friends for the longest time was in World War II, but not in my unit. He was in some other unit. We linked up when we were 40 or 50 and just became friends. And that's how I view stuff like this, right?
That,
Like
oh, for sure, definitely. I
I was
mean,
never a Marine and we weren't even in country around the same time, but like we fought the same war.
yep,
So like taking care of each other and like listening to, stories not just about like your job or your duties over there, but like how it affects you, how you felt about it, how do you feel now about it. That's what I think we should do a better job of as veterans. I really do.
definitely. And that's kind of
And
why I wanted to do this is show that regardless of the differences in branch and obviously the job duties or MOS, whatever you want to signify your specialty, there's a lot that we all have in common. I mean, even if you didn't deploy while during the GWAT, like there's roles that are played that all are relative to the function of this giant machine that's the US military. So everybody has a part that's played. And like there's a bad bunch here, there's a bad bunch there, but generally for the people that we associate ourselves with and continue to associate ourselves with, they're all people that would have answered that call and put their lives on the line for somebody else if the situation called for it. So nobody should be um upset with their time in service. And it's easy
yeah,
for me to say because I got to go, I did 3 deployments and like that's what it is. Um, but there's some people that did none, and that's unfortunate. But you know,
it has become a counterculture thing that I have noticed with the next generation where like, it's all a joke, right? It's all memeable and stuff like that. And
yeah.
I think that's just due to them still being young.
Oh, for sure.
And
I was a condescending piece of shit when I was a 19 or 20-year-old, like might come back from my first combat deployment. I think I'm
no,
the fucking saltiest dude on the face of the earth, talking shit to people that, oh, you fucking boot or you fucking pogue, like you never step foot outside the wire, you never engage the enemy, like fuck you. And after growing older and like, becoming friends with people, like I've just and going through therapy too. I mean, going through the different nonprofit organization programs, going through the VA, like over and over. Like I still go to therapy every Tuesday, 4 o'clock.
that's
I
awesome to hear,
yeah, so
by the way.
I do that. Like, and that's the
I
thing. Like,
think
I'm
people
not a
should normalize it.
definitely. I'm not afraid to admit it, dude. Like I definitely think that with repetition and schedule and continuing to attack the problems that you're facing, that like slowly it works itself out. And doing this with you and I, like it's a release on, and I would hope for you as for me, like it's a little bit more weight off the pack, a
Yeah,
little
I
more
think this is a
understanding, a
form of
little
therapy.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm not a mental health professional. I always tell people that, but I have quite a bit of experience in one, going through it myself, being involved in these different programs. I still have a lot of the course material and the things that we go over. And through the other people that I know, like we just continue to lift up and support each other. And, nonprofits are a huge thing. Have you participated in any nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, so the round canopy parachute team, the team that teaches people how to parachute, is one. Every time I go, I donate a rifle. I donate a
Nice.
custom rifle that I build with a friend, and we custom Cerakote it, and we auction it off there. So the first one we did matched the Tico Bell, so it had all World War II colors and markings as the plane. And that one went for $3,400, just straight to them. And then this last one, I was beyond shocked. We built one with the Jumpmaster logos for them. Beautiful gun. And we were lucky enough that one of the Black Rifle Coffee guys bought it for $6,500.
Nice.
And all that just goes to them helping, get people back into jumping, right? Because
Yeah,
a lot of paratroopers, that's the one thing they miss and they want to get back into it. And now they have a way to do it. And then the other one is the Veteran Overlanding Group out of Oregon. Every time I go, I donate a rifle. They auction it off to raise money where they bring veterans in from out of state to do basically an overlanding trip, which, if for people who don't know, it's basically camping out of your vehicle, but they set up classes on how to do CB radios, how to do recovery, with all the different recovery equipment, how to attack different trails depending on what your vehicle is rated for. And these are all veterans themselves from all different walks of life, and they do a wonderful job um, putting these on and bringing people who have all different walks of life and MOSs
right.
together to just go on like a trip, right, go through these trails that are like, you're submerging your vehicle up to your window, like
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I never heard that. And that's another thing that, like, why I like doing this is because maybe somebody wouldn't like to go horseback riding or mountain climbing or whitewater rafting, but they're down
yeah,
as fuck to do some vehicle overlanding stuff. And I
yeah.
would
You
never
know
know
how
that
many
that's a thing,
veterans
dude, you know?
have Tacomas or Forerunners
Oh,
now? That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
become the new like
Yeah, like they're
when
like, yeah, that's a Hilux, but it's actually a Tacoma. It's
yeah,
close,
it's a
bro.
Tacoma.
It's close.
Yeah. As soon as Toyota came out with the flat dark earth Toyotas,
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like, every person I know is going to buy that, and they
Yeah,
did. Like, luckily, I
that's
bought
when
a
Toyota
'03
starts
one.
throwing a fucking dealership right outside the bases. It's like
Oh,
37% APR on
it's
a
making
yeah.
money.
All right, so one last thing I'd like to ask you.
Okay.
As you being yourself a veteran, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, growing up basically through the GWAT and witnessing the start of it, witnessing the culmination and the end, the withdrawal. If you can think about what the collective experience as a whole, and you had one word to describe that, what word would that be?
I mean, the go-to one would always be, I guess, shit show. But to try to put a positive spin on it, um, I would just use the word lessons. Like, I think we're all here to figure out what life is, and I think life is just learning these lessons. And some people learn lessons early, some people learn lessons late in life. And I think me going through the GWAT and witnessing the towers fall and then signing on the dotted line and then putting a boot on ground in both areas and then leaving and then watching them fall apart on television, I think I learned a lot of life lessons that I don't think I would have learned any other way. Or I don't think people have learned these lessons like yet in their life and they're way older than me. That's something I think we have in common with different generations. Go back to the World War II veteran. He apologized to me about our war because he's like, my war, he's an Italian man, so he does this a lot. And he goes, he's
Hey,
like, he's like, we,
gabagool. Yeah.
he's like, we fought the Nazis. They were the bad guys. We beat the Nazis. We go home. He's
Yep.
like, you guys went over, and that wasn't your fault. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like, it's so weird how he said it, but it made so much, we never got a V Day, right?
Right. Right.
We always thought we were going to have our victory day, and unfortunately, especially on your side of the house, it cost a lot of lives.
Yeah.
You know, was it 13 people,
Yeah, that
11
they
Marines, one Army personnel, one Navy personnel?
yep.
The last day. That's it's ridiculous to think that that is how it will be remembered.
Yeah, it's unfortunate as fuck. But yeah, lessons learned for sure. Um, Dude, this has been great, and you've got some good insight on things. You got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. I'm glad that you're able to implement that in a way that one gives you, you know, like a creative outlet in the sense that you're applying these skills that you took from the army and you're making it as a way for you to bring in income and support yourself and continue doing what you love doing. giving back to your community. You participate in these nonprofit organizations, and you're putting in work, like out on in the field, not just sitting behind a computer screen. So uh, I
The most
appreciate,
I've been behind a computer is with you right now,
yeah,
this whole week. and I
yeah.
and I'm thankful that I had the time, and I think that it's amazing you do this for other veterans and to get their stories out there. Like this is, I think, your gift, and it's really cool to see.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. We'll have to my sister lives in Everett. Do you know where that is?
Yeah,
Everett?
that's where my ex-wife's from.
Oh shit. Okay. Well,
You're 2 hours away, and I own a big house. I got a spare room. You're always welcome.
yeah, I was gonna say,
That's another thing.
make my way up and come run one of these courses with you and test my might, see how the Marines hold up against the Army.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of memorizing, so I hope you're good at that. Colors
Yeah,
and stuff.
I was pretty good at the Kim's game. Did you guys ever do that? The keep in mind games, like where you before you do like I don't know,
Yeah, so
like
that's the
Combat
biggest thing with
Hunter.
yeah, that's the biggest thing with long gun thing is everything is a Kim's game
Yeah.
because you're just staring at shit all day. So they literally take us into a parking lot and smoke us, and then we'd run somewhere else, and they're like, "Who can name all 12 cars in the parking lot? What color and anything like distinguishable about them?" But they wouldn't tell you ahead of time.
Yeah,
So
right,
like,
right. So you got to use like what you're absorbing and
yep.
taking in,
So
remember that shit.
that's my favorite thing to do with people, and that's something that the sports science instructor is amazing at. And I got up to where I could remember a 13-digit combo. So like you'll be running around shooting guns and having to do math problems, and then he's like, "All right, what are all the math problems equal up to?" And you're like, 7 plus 5 plus four. Like
Yeah,
I love that shit.
that's good. I love it too. So yeah, we'll plan something in the future. My objective is to like go around and start hopefully being able to do this stuff in person. I'm working on doing that right now, and it's pretty close to that point. So Brent Brabant, right? That's how you say your
Yep.
last name, Brent
Yep.
Brabant, United States Army soldier, owner of 11 Bravo LLC, and dude. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. I'm fortunate that you sat down with me and were able to do this, and hopefully we get to link up in person in the future.
Thanks for having me on. And it was awesome to see you, kiss your kid goodnight and like clearly, you fit this around your dad's schedule.
Yeah.
And that thank you, like for real.
Hey, it's not I do it for, and this is like I always tell people, there's no it's not like a monetary thing. I have no intentions on like becoming um I don't know what the term is, but this isn't for it's to document what happened from individual perspectives and to make people think outside the box in terms of what the other veterans are going through and the things that they sacrificed, and then also the resilience side of it. So that's what it's all about, dude. And you've shown true to your colors and the way that you are, what you see online, that's who you are, as I talk to you. So I would assume nothing but good things, and I appreciate your time. And like I said, it's awesome to see that you're doing cool stuff out there.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, well, hey, guys, that was Brent Brabant on the Pressing Forward podcast. We'll catch you later.